Welcome to the Land Your Bets Show. I'm your host, Nate Weitzer, bringing you closing looks for Week 11. We had the opening looks on Tuesday. Going forward, we're just going to skip right to the closing looks, so you can find these every Saturday to get your picks locked down for Sunday NFL action. We also have a Sunday night football video that's going to be coming out there instead of the opening looks, and that breaks down the Lions and Eagles for Week 11. Of course, Monday Night Football with Josh and all the good betting content on landyourbets.com. But let's go over what we did have to open the week. It was Atlanta and Vikings covering. Those props are still looking good in my mind. I'll break them down in a minute. Cardinals, I think that's flipped. Different prop there. And Rams as well, some different props to look at in that game. The potential shootout in Pittsburgh, I have two different looks there. And a couple other games to mention here on the slate. But starting off with the Vikings, the cap is definitely Vikings for me. I know people are pretty evenly split on this in terms of basically having no faith in J.J. McCarthy. But, coaching is an NFL betting handicap for me. And I think KOC over Dennis Allen and that Bears defense, which has been pretty banged up, might get a couple guys back here, but still not good unit coaching-wise. And then you have Brian Flores flustering Caleb Williams, who might start hot under Ben Johnson, and maybe you get a good start, and maybe you get a good number on the live bet for Minnesota. But, even with Grenard out and maybe another guy or two banged up for that Vikings defense, they still have a lot more guys back than they did early in the season when they faced this team. And Caleb still got flustered in the second half, allowing JJ to come back, win that game in Chicago. And now we're expecting a positive curve to continue for the Rook, second-year guy. But that means, I think, finally connecting with Justin Jefferson, who just has massive unrealized air yards in 4 starts with McCarthy. He only has a 50% catch rate. All these numbers you can go through as far as they are just not on the same page. He's still getting a 31% target share, 111 air yards per game. He had, 160 unrealized air yards just last week. And then he tweets on social media and says in an interview as well that he's basically locked in on getting back to the form he was in 2022. He tweeted a video of himself making incredible catches in that season. And so it's basically a smash spot for the Bears defense. As long as Jalen Johnson isn't a full go, still don't know if he's going to play. You're going to return from that groin injury, but I don't think he's going to be healthy enough to shadow Jetta. I don't know if the Bears are going to just play straight up man against this team. They'll probably mix in a ton of zone to try to fluster McCarthy, and Jetta has been amazing against zone. He did have 74 yards, which is over his prop in 3 straight prior to going 47 and a touchdown at Detroit. And then the unrealized air yards last week. Well, Jalen Naylor went nuts, but any Vikings receiver could have a good day here because the Bears have become a pass funnel. They allow the most yards per attempt on the road, even more than the Washington Commanders. Jackson Dart last week had 205 in Chicago at halftime, and Darius Slayton was just dunking on dudes. So gulf of talent discrepancy between Darius Slayton and Jay Jetta, who's motivated to, after maybe one of the worst games of his career, in terms of letting McCarthy down on a couple of long shots on those unrealized air yards. I think he comes back big time. I think Atlanta's going to bounce back, beat Carolina. I talked about this one. He's still sitting at the -3.5, and the injury report is not great. So for me, it's more of a money line leg are the Falcons, or maybe you just want to adjust it down to under the field goal. But for me, it's again fading the visiting quarterback, Bryce Young, against a pretty good defense. Definitely the better of the two defenses. You look at Atlanta at home, holding quarterbacks to a 79 passer rating versus 101 on the road. They have a 3-5 touchdown to interception ratio and 21 sacks at home. They haven't been home in a couple weeks. They've been playing two of the best teams in the AFC and played them right down to the wire. And we know, meanwhile, Carolina, which they admitted they were kind of smelling themselves after winning in Green Bay, they couldn't do anything against the Saints. And while you try not to read too much into those week-to-week results, it's just the scheme that the Saints were able to just be like, okay, we're going to stack the box. What do you got, Bryce Young? He has nothing. He is one of the 5 worst quarterbacks in the league. One of the worst for my money, pushing in terms of just arm strength. If you can confine him in the pocket, force him to push the ball outside the numbers, he could throw another pick 6, basically. He is a walking disaster. He's also really bad against the blitz and against pressure, and the Falcons are now the second heaviest blitz team. So I think they can potentially do it on that side. of the ball, like the Falcons as a cheap DFS play. Their defense, that is. I like Bijan to pop a couple big plays here, though. I mean, you can parlay him to get 100 scrimmage yards with the win, which he hasn't done in actually 4 straight games. He's due. He's also due for some big plays, and I think I lean more towards the longest rush or longest reception. Rush, you'll probably get more opportunities here, and the Panthers are their bottom 10 in explosive rush play rate allowed versus top 5 in EPA. I don't know how much you really want to read into EPA these days. Like, you need schedule adjusted metrics. You need to trust your eyes. And yeah, I mean, I trust the fact that the Panthers D gave up 115 scrimmage yards to the ghost of Alvin Kamara last week. And now they get one of the top 3 running backs in the league, an elite athlete who had a dud in his last home game against Miami when everyone expected him to smash, with Kirk Cousins under center. And the offense just folded, and it was just one of the most surprising results of the season. I will remind you that his previous 2 home games, he averaged 210 scrimmage yards per game, and the fact that he put up 173 the last time he faced the Panthers at home late last season, and he averaged 5.5 yards per carry in a 30-0 loss to the Panthers, which this game could completely flip in terms of the Falcons running away with it if they're able to just stymie Bryce Young. So yeah, I like both those games as money line legs. And I mean, KC right here is your anchor leg for a money line parlay. KC doesn't really cover over in field goal. They could in this spot. It's Andy Reid off a bye, all that good stuff. 22-4 straight up. They cannot lose this game. The Broncos offense is a mess, and they don't have Pat Surtain on defense. They don't have J.K. Dobbins as well to kind of stabilize that offense a little bit. Chiefs getting a couple linemen back after the bye. And yes, it's a must win. They're 5-4. They cannot lose to the division leading Broncos. If they win this one, they still have a good shot to win that division. And that might be a futures look, but this is your anchor leg, right? So, I mean, whether you want to take Atlanta or Minnesota in terms of the games I mentioned before, I would also throw Pittsburgh in there. I have put Pittsburgh money line in some parlays with the Chiefs, but I'll get to that game in a second. It's just a situation where Casey's going to win the game one way or another. They have to. And I am not going to bet against Mahomes and Andy Reid after a bye, or this man, who's probably going to benefit from a little extra rest, old reliable. And I think there's just a misnomer here with his props, it being 17, 18 yards below the season average. Do we think that Rashee Rice being back is a reason we're deflating Travis Kelce? Is it because the Broncos defense is very good? Yes, the Broncos defense is elite, but for years now, they've been more vulnerable against tight ends than wide receivers because they have one of the best secondaries, and therefore offenses adjust, throw the ball over the interior. They're going to have to worry a lot about Rice over the interior, which, as you see at the bottom there, 73 yards per game in 3 with Rice back for Kelce. He's gone over his prop, this prop in all 3 of those, and that was despite playing just 62% of the snaps in a blowout over the Raiders. In a close game at Buffalo, right before the bye, 88% of the snaps. And we're talking about a similar big spot, similar on-the-road spot, where Mahomes is going to go to the guy he trusts. And it's interesting, he actually has better splits against the AFC West, does Kelce, with 45 plus yards in 12 straight against the division. He averaged 61 yards per game against Denver last year. It's sort of a situation where, like, yeah, there's familiarity on both sides, but when you have a guy with a mind meld with the quarterback and he's seen every defense, and much of his production is just based on identifying the defense, sitting down in zone coverages, or choosing the right option in man, and his quarterback knows exactly what he's doing. The familiarity seems to be working more so for Kelce than for the defense. It's like he's a step ahead of you, Vance Joseph, and so is Mahomes. So I think he looks at his old reliable target here, does Mahomes. And Kelce, I mean, easily it could be a good parlay with the receptions, just like 5 for 50. Seems well within the sphere here, and that would be 2-1 on your money, because he usually gets there on volume. He's not a big play guy at this point. He's just catching, again, those little 15-yard sit routes, and that's what you got to do against the Broncos. They don't give up much on the boundary, in part because Riley Moss just pulls people down. And if you bet on a wide receiver against them, you're going to be pretty pissed at getting those PI calls instead. But I mentioned the Pittsburgh Steelers. This total is down to 49.5, and I don't really want to bet the over. I've actually lean more towards the Steelers side of this because I think they're going to adjust against Joe Flacco after getting embarrassed by the old man a couple of weeks ago, right? So, I mean, This is also a situation where Steelers could get ahead, force Flacco into big time passing situations. It's also a situation with Tomlin on normal rest after a loss. These are trends that definitely favor the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. They've been incredible. I remind you just 2 weeks ago when they shut down Jonathan Taylor and the Indianapolis Colts at home, forcing 6 turnovers. So I definitely think that Flacco might be in for a little bit of a pumpkin. I mean, even if he's in a shootout, though, that Bengals defense can't stop anybody. And so I mentioned them shutting down Taylor. I think fading Chase Brown is my favorite look in this game. I mean, his prop has risen to about 60 yards on the rush line because Samaje Perine's out, and everybody would project him for 95% of the snaps again, perhaps. But will the Bengals even be able to stick with the run? Their run blocking is awful. It was the worst in the league and worst over the last decade for the first 4 weeks. Then Flacco got in there, and they were able to loosen up the defense a little bit, and Brown actually punched the Steelers, right, for 101 yards on 8 carries, though, just 8 carries. So they don't necessarily stick with it even when it's working, do the Bengals. So, I mean, you could take under on the carries here. I would take over on the receiving, though, for Brown, because I think we can easily project a negative script when you talk about a Bengals defense that offers no resistance, an angry Steelers team back at home, probably going to be putting points up. And then you see Flacco drop back 40 plus times and just dump it off to Brown, who's at 3.5 receptions or 21 yards as a receiver. Potential negative correlation parlay here where he goes under the rush, over the receiving, if you want to get spicy with it. I'm personally just looking, Chase Brown does not rush for 60. The Steelers win this game on the back of their defense, which, like I said, dominated at home against the best running back in the league right now. They've allowed now the lowest percentage of rush yards at home. 22% of the yards from the opponent is on the ground against them. They're allowing just 3.5 yards per carry overall in their last 3. And Cam Hayward is still the number 1 D tackle in the league at 37 years old. Just pretty amazing stuff there. But yeah, and one other pick on the other side is DK Metcalf. 51 yards on the receiving. It's possible he gets the touchdown here. There was a parlay we just barely missed 2 weeks ago against the Colts, which is Rodgers to throw to and DK to catch one of those. He actually was close twice on that, and a Colts DB was able to break it up. I don't think the Bengals are going to be able to stop him in the red zone. He's been a red zone monster. He's now due for touchdown regression after missing in the last 2 weeks. Bunch of unrealized air yards last week. No Trey Hendrickson to fluster Rodgers, which is what we saw last week in a frustrating day for the Steelers offense. And Cam Taylor-Britt's back, and he's given up a ton of big plays for the Bengals over the last few years. He's allowing 14 yards per reception this year. So DK, his prop is 22.5 longest reception. I think he can break a big play for a touchdown, or Rodgers could just toss it to him. And I think there's a nice little bit of action there, as well as a guy, with multi-touchdown upside if you're looking for a DFS play. So the Rams now -3 most spots. If you got them below the hook, that's great. -3.5 in some spots. Too rich for my blood. I'm also not taking Seattle, though. I mean, in these huge regular season games, usually best to sit away from the spread and look at some player props, look at some different angles. I mean, you still have a veteran QB who has all the answers. I therefore give Stafford the edge over the Seahawks defense to a degree, certainly more than Darnold against this Rams defense. A Rams team that's played a superior strength of schedule and just has a titan of an offense. And I was talking about Puka. I think his number did come out a little too high, around 90. JSN's number is also way too high at 100, considering the stakes here. So I'm going back to Kyren Williams, who came through last week despite really playing an even timeshare with Blake Corum. And I think that there was some thought there from McVay being like, look, we're in control of this game against the Niners. They can't stop anybody. I'm going to give Kyren a little bit of a blow, give Corum a couple series just to himself. There's a chance he was even thinking ahead to this game and saying, you know what, we have a bigger division game next week where I'm going to lean on Kyren more. And I talked about the numbers more going into that one. In the previous 5 division games, Kyren played over 90% of the snaps in all of them. Blake Corum played a total of 19 snaps, including getting benched early in the season against the Niners. So, I mean, we know who they trust. We know who they trust in pass protection against a really good defensive front now. versus playing the worst defensive front in the 49ers. Yes, the Seahawks are really good in run defense, but the Rams are number one run blocking with a bullet since getting Avila and Havenstein back. They are 10 points better per PFF grading than any other unit, including the Indianapolis Colts. So I'll take Kyren at a very vulnerable number, 56.5 yards, 53.5 in some spots. I think you can get over that just on sheer volume in a close game where neither quarterback's going to be dropping back and having that much success necessarily. And they're going to have to be conservative, are the Rams, to try to keep things moving against a really good Seahawks defense. And on the other side, Sam Darnold could really struggle against the interior pass rush of the Rams. I mean, their D tackles are fantastic. And the Seahawks just lost their center, Jalen Sundell, for the season. Their guards are not as good as their tackles, so they're vulnerable to interior pressure. And they just frankly haven't faced great pressure teams in the last few. Sam Darnold has looked great. I don't mean to poo-poo his season. He's been fantastic. He's definitely improved, but we have seen in the past that if you get interior pressure against him, he will just collapse. So I would be fading his passing yards. At 252.5 is a little high. This Rams defense, while some may point holes in the secondary, like Chris Shula is scheming his ass off. Sean McVay is obviously a great coach. He's held JSN in check in 3 of 4 meetings so far, and I mean really in check. He did go off in one in Seattle, but otherwise at LA, he's been under 45 yards. So they might have a good scheme in place for JSN and Darnold with Torrey Horton out. I don't know how many other big shot plays he's going to have. Rashid Shaheed still learning the playbook. I don't love this Seahawks offense in this matchup, and I know it's good on the other side, but that's why I lean towards the Rams. And I think Darnold, who took 12 sacks in 2 matchups with the Rams last year with the Vikings, still did not get to this number in total trail situations, at 240 and 245 in a playoff game. Yeah, I don't necessarily see a big day from him. So that is my preferred fade for this game. This is another one that's flipped, another NFC West bout. I would go with the Niners at this point based on what we know about the Arizona injury report. Certainly under a field goal is what I would look for it to adjust it or just take money line on the Niners. But we got opposite news on the injury report for both these teams. Ricky Pearsall's finally back. Brock Purdy's finally back. And the Cardinals are still going to be missing at least 3 defensive starters. A couple of linemen also are questionable. The 49ers are clawing for a playoff spot. Cardinals have very little to play for. They're not as well coached as the Niners, of course. Kyle Shanahan is 3-0 ATS after a loss this season, covering by 10 points per game. Also 3-0 ATS as a road favorite. And the Cardinals have collapsed in the fourth quarter time and time again. While Jacoby Brissett should have time in the pocket, I'm not too bullish on his stats. I mean, he could get there on volume, but he just doesn't have receivers now. Yeah, Marvin Harrison's not going to play. Zay Flowers out for the year. I would look at Greg Dortch as a low-cost prop there. I think it was only 32.5 yards when I got it, 3.5 receptions. He's probably going to be dumping it off to Dortch a lot underneath. I think the Niners are going to be selling out to try to bracket Trey McBride as really the only option for Arizona to get some downfield passing going. So Brissett, he loves that tight end, but I think he's going to have to be checking it down to Dortch, who could definitely capitalize on some of the underneath stuff there. And then on the other side, CMC, another guy who's getting more receiving work than rushing work, even in positive game script 2 weeks ago. He was crushing the Giants as a runner and a receiver. But you could look at Brian Robinson if you want to continue with that trend. I mean, Robinson has 50-plus yards in both the last 2 games in completely opposite game scripts because the Niners have tried to integrate him as an interior rusher and save CMC for these routes that he's running because he's the best receiving back by far. Could be a full-time slot receiver if he wants. And Arizona is pretty good straight up the middle on rush defense. I mean, they were 4th in rush defense EPA just a couple weeks ago. Calais Campbell's still playing his ass off. So I don't know if McCaffrey's going to get the 71.5 rush yards. There's definitely a world where you get another negative correlation there. Under 71.5 rush and 50-plus receiving yards is better than 2-1 on your money as far as the negative correlation parlay there. Or if you just want to take CMC receiving, that makes sense. I mean, he did tag this team 10 of 15 targets in week 3. Ricky Pearsall went off in that game, and Pearsall being back is going to soften up that defense, force a lot of the safeties to carry his routes deep and open things up for McCaffrey underneath. So don't hate it. And he only did average 3.1 yards per carry against Arizona in week 3. I do hate taking over on the rushing yards, though. So I don't see him as a huge interior rusher guy. But that is all the time we have for you in week 11. Please check out landyourbets.com, where we're bringing you our exact plays, more plays than we just mentioned here. Go through every game. We have the Swish Analytics projections to help you get ready for NFL, NBA every night. Josh Lander, my co-host, is killing it with his NBA picks. So please check out the site. Everything we do here is free. Like and subscribe on YouTube, and we'll see you next. Happy betting.